the Bristol International Raceway, a half-mile bull ring nestled in the mountains of East Tennessee. It's home this week for NASCAR Today. Live from Bristol, the stars of Winston Cup Racing are on the track and practicing, and yes, it is noisy. Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Despain. Welcome to the busiest pit road and the most crowded infield in Winston Cup Racing. The watchword here, intensity. We're going short track racing tonight live on ESPN. 36 cars will make the show. That means 8 drivers are going home from this place. Just a quarter of a second bracket at the top 20 qualifiers, and Mr. Intensity has ended up on the pole. This practice session is critical for those who are not yet qualified. Let's start with yesterday's action when we locked in the top 20. One of the 3 fastest cars in practice was first out to qualify. Terry Labonte, runner-up to his little brother last week at Michigan, picked up a little from practice, broke the event qualifying record, gave everybody else a 15.392 lap to shoot at.
We were pretty quick in practice. You don't ever know about qualifying here because, you know, it cools off and the speeds increase a little bit, and a lot of guys can pick up some for qualifying where other guys can't. So, I don't know. I think that ought to get us up in the top 10.
Defending race champ Rusty Wallace took a shot, wound up 5th. Michael Waltrip, who had the crash of a lifetime here a few years ago, peeled off a 15.438, second best at the time.
Made a good call on the gear. You know, we changed gears, and that helped it a little bit. Made a good call on the tires. So this deal's tough, man. This racing is just wear you out if you let it. But, you know, mentally, my heart and soul was into getting in the top 10 tonight.
Hey, how about the rookie Ricky Craven, 6th quick.
When you're that close, you say, where could I have gotten a 10th, you know? Because we want to be in that Busch Clash so bad.
But the other 2 guys we were all waiting for went out late. 25th of 49 qualifiers, Jeff Gordon could not move Waltrip off the front row.
I went for it. You got to go for it on the first lap here. And, you know, I got a little bit shaky down here in 3 and 4. Car kind of loose, then pushed. And wasn't anything I could do about it, but run real hard. And we'll take that. You know, as long as we're up front, top 5 or 10, I'll be happy.
I'll save the best for last. Actually, 5th from last. Mark Martin looking for his 4th pole here and 4th of the year. Got it. Broken timing chain last week at Michigan. In terms of that championship momentum, that was a big setback. Do you feel like maybe this helps get that momentum rolling again for the late season drive?
I'm not sure I believe in all that momentum stuff. You know, things happen and they don't happen, and that's the way it is. We lost 140 points last week. Those are 140 that we really didn't need to lose. We'll see what happens.
You've been quoted as saying about yourself and your personality that you're such an intense guy. You take something that's really kind of fun and you turn it into work. I'm wondering, in terms of fun, is this a fun place to race, even for an intense guy like you?
No, it's fun to run good, but this place is too hard to... It's too hard to be fun even when you're running good. This is the hardest racetrack to drive that I can think of. If you drive really fast, you're out of control all the time.
There's a hard-working guy looking forward to a hard night's work tonight, but he needs the points. Outside the front row, well, Alan Bestwick is with the man who starts 2nd tonight.
That is Terry Labonte, the 1984 winner of this race. You get around this racetrack in such a hurry. Last night in qualifying, how did you know the difference in the race car between a good lap and the great lap you did?
Well, we've been pretty good in practice all day long, and we were the first car out qualifying, and so I didn't really know how we'd run. A lot of times the track picks up when it cools off a little bit, so the speeds would have been a little bit higher. We made that lap, and I thought, well, I think it's pretty good, but there were some other cars that were equally as good in practice, and then Mark got us there at the end, but it was still a good run for us.
How will starting up front help you in tonight's race?
Well, hopefully it'll help you stay out of any trouble or something like that. It's an awful fast racetrack. You catch traffic, you know, pretty fast. It's really difficult to pass here. You've got to be patient here.
Terry Labonte, they struggled a little bit in the month of July, but he's been on the lead lap at the finish of 7 of the last 8 races. He's looking for another Bristol win tonight, Dave.
All right, thank you, Alan Bestwick. Let's take a look at how that top 20 qualified. First of all, we have 3 brands in the top 3 starting spots. No real surprises up there, except perhaps Waltrip, who hasn't been qualifying that well of late. Moving on to the second 5. Good run there for Ricky Craven, and not bad for the champion Dale Earnhardt as we head into the short track string here. Further back in 14th spot, you've got Robert Presley as the second rookie, and a good job by Rich Bickle as they continue to do the driver shuffle in car number 40 for Dick Brooks. Dale Jarrett got about what he expected out of qualifying. The Burton boys starting 17th and 18th. We'll hear from Ward a little later, and Darrell Waltrip is a 12-time winner on this racetrack. All right, now we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll find out about the personnel shuffle that's about to take place in the championship team. Dale Earnhardt will be getting a new crew chief. We'll have that and a whole lot more as we continue from Thunder Valley, Bristol International Raceway. Stay with us.
NASCAR Today is brought to you by the NASCAR Story, the complete history of NASCAR on home video. To order, call 1-800-71-NASCAR.
Back live at Bristol, where the weather is a story, and it's a good news, bad news situation. Those clouds rolling in over my shoulder above turn 4 have kept the racetrack temperatures nice and cool, and that's good news for those not yet qualified. Consider this: Trickle, Speed, Marcus, Ruttman, Kenny Wallace, Andretti, Hensley, Hillen, Todd Bodine, Sachs, and Sawyer all qualified 33rd or slower yesterday. This cool weather will help them in the second round if they run the second round. But if it rains out, that's bad news for a lot of guys. Trickle, Speed, Andretti, and Bodine, as we see it, would have the provisionals, and the rest of those guys would all be going home. And, of course, the race tonight, scheduled at 7:30, could also be threatened by the weather. We're assuming we'll get it in, and you'll see it live on ESPN. Now let's go up pit road to Alan Bestwick.
All right, I'm in the Dale Earnhardt pit. The big news this week in NASCAR racing, Andy Petry's announcement on Monday night that he was going to resign at the end of this season to go and be the crew chief for the Leo Jackson racing team. Now, on the surface, it seems kind of ludicrous that Petry would leave a 6-time championship team with a 7-time championship driver to go to a race team that's never won a championship and has a rookie driver. But the hook to it is that Andy Petry gets to buy the 33 team from Leo Jackson after spending 2 years as Robert Presley's crew chief. And that fulfills Petry's next career goal.
I wouldn't leave this team just to take another crew chief position. It's an opportunity for me to further my career, and that's the reason I've done it. If I was going to remain as a crew chief, you couldn't do it with any better organization than this team here.
You know that about any crew chief Richard Childress would call for the job would be delighted to talk with him about it. But Childress says there's a protocol he'll follow in the hiring process.
I don't want to go out, and I'm not going to go out and try to steal somebody's crew chief. You know, if they come to me and say, hey, I'm interested in talking, I'll talk to them. But as far as just going out and pursuing someone, I'm not.
Richard Childress made it very clear that Dale Earnhardt will play a major role in the hiring process, and while the qualifications needed for the job are many, Earnhardt has one at the top of his list.
This sport's so competitive, you got to have somebody that's innovative, somebody that works hard and looks into the future, so to speak. It's always trying things, doesn't sort of stand back and say, well, let's work last time. And that's the way Andy's been. We're always working to try to find something better and faster. And that's what you got to look at. How innovative can a guy be, and how well does he work with a team?
All right, so the big question is, Petry's gone at the end of the year, yet has to run out the string with Earnhardt for the rest of this season. Who is going to replace Petry with Childress Racing? Well, early speculation is it might come from within the racing team. A couple of good candidates there. How about Will Lynn, who was with the Flying Aces until about a year and a half ago. Now he's heading up Childress' Super Truck program. No lack of success there this year. Another possible candidate, Bobby Hutchins. He's the shop foreman of Childress Racing. He's very heavily involved in their car construction and also in their testing program. Hey, also, you never know whose phone is going to ring at Richard Childress' shop, who's going to be on the other end of it. Could be anybody at this point, but perhaps from within. Dave Despain.
All right, thank you very much, Alan. A lot of the good cars are out practicing right now. Rusty Wallace has just come off the racetrack. Come with me, and we'll see if we can catch a word. He's conferring with Robin Pemberton. Rusty, you're a 5-time winner here in the defending champion. Tell me about the confidence level coming in tonight.
Well, when you win 5 times and it's your favorite racetrack, you got to have pretty high confidence level, no doubt about that.
Is the car performance backing that up here this weekend? 5th is not a bad place to start here.
Well, I've always had a good handling car here at Bristol, and right now the car's handling great. I've qualified 5th, I'm not a great qualifier, everybody knows that, but it sure is handling good in practice right before the race here.
With 10 races to go, you're out of the championship picture. What do you need to accomplish between here and the end of the year?
Well, it doesn't look good for the championship right now because I'm just so far behind, but all I can do is just get as many points as I possibly can. I'd like to get up in that coveted top 5. That'd feel good.
There's a guy who can win it tonight, no problem. That is Rusty Wallace. We're going to take a quick break. We're live at Bristol in the noise in the Valley. This is Thunder Valley, scene of tonight's 35th running of the Goodies 500. Stay with us. I'm out of breath. We've come all the way to the transporter area. Well, look what they're watching here back at the back of the 5 truck. But we didn't come here to watch me. We came to look at the scoring monitor that shows that Bobby Labonte is the quickest lap thus far in second round practice. Kenny Wallace, Terry Labonte, Mark Martin, Jeremy Mayfield, Robert Presley, Todd Bodine, Ricky Rudd, Kyle Petty, and John Andretti are your top 10. You remember those guys we talked about that need to run well here in the second round of qualifying. Now, let's talk about the news this week. There was a big meeting this morning. Alan Bestwick, what's the verdict?
The meeting was with engine builders and team owners on the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit concerning engine rule changes for the restrictor plate tracks next season, Daytona and Talladega. NASCAR will mandate a 14-to-1 compression ratio on those restrictor plate engines next year. They will also remove the insert from the center of the manifold the teams had used to direct air into each of the cylinders. That's gone for next year also. That should also cut the horsepower. What size restrictor plate will they use? No idea yet. NASCAR will conduct tests with the 14-to-1 engines. They also don't know what configuration restrictor plate they'll use. May have 4 holes in it like the one now. May just have 1. We're going to do a lot of testing over the next several months to find that out. But 14-to-1 restricted engines next year at Daytona and Talladega.
All right, thank you, Alan. Couple of quick updates. Dale Jarrett's sponsorship hunt continues. He says Monday is the cutoff. They've got to get a deal done this weekend. Talked to Buddy Parrott, who was crew chief for Steve Grissom and left that team, about what he's going to do. He, too, has to make a decision next week. His options are to go with Ward Burton on Bill Davis' number 22 car, to become a consultant for Chevrolet. That's one that everybody's been talking about. And he hinted that there's a third option that he didn't want to talk about, but he figures he's got to make a decision before Darlington, which is coming up next weekend. We mentioned Ward Burton. There's another big driver shuffle that has happened here this weekend, and Alan, I think, is on top of that story.
We're talking about a triangular driver change this weekend. You've got Ward Burton, who was let go from the Hardee's car at the beginning of last week. So he came over here to Bill Davis Racing for next week, displacing Jimmy Hensley, who went over to the 32 active racing car, displacing Greg Sachs, who replaced Ward Burton in the Hardee's car. We're going to see if we can get a word here with Ward while he sits inside his car. Ward, is a good qualifying run yesterday. Tell me about signing up with this ride for the next year.
I appreciate it, Alan. I'm just tickled death to be with the MBNA team. Bill Davis, Chris Tuffy, all the guys here really easy to get along with, and they're taking this racing serious, and I'm still a little bit, I don't know, I still wish I could have fulfilled my obligation to Hardy. Probably do us a favor. We're going to be able to run 10 races here this year and be ready for the next 2 years, so we're real excited.
All right, that's Ward Burton. You can see he's strapped inside the car. They're practicing now. They had their best qualifying run almost of the season, except the Wally Dallenbach run at Watkins Glen for this car with Ward Burton last night.
All right, Alan, we can barely hear you. It's noisy out there. It may be a little quieter back here. One quick correction from last week. We said that Ward Burton was the last Busch Grand National driver disqualified from a win. That's incorrect. It was Jeff Burton. My apologies to Ward. Take a look here. This is called a crash cart. Under here, everything you need to fix a wrecked race car. I'm not wishing these guys any bad luck, but the point is all the teams have one of those. Maybe tonight on our 7 o'clock show, we'll have a chance to take a look and see what's in there. The key issue, of course, is the difficulty of this racetrack and the damage that you can do to a race car here. I don't think there's a track on the Winston Cup Tour that's tougher to beat in terms of physical damage, and I'm not the only one who thinks that.
The reality is 9 times out of 10 you're going to come out of here in 2 ways. Unscathed and win the race, or in the basket. But either way you bring the car here, it's got to be bulletproof, Dave. You don't bring lightweight stuff here. You don't bring flimsy brackets on fenders or anything, because believe me, when you run 500 laps at Bristol, everything you've got is going to be wore out and just virtually destroyed just from the racetrack alone. Then you put 30 other guys out there to lean on it, and it's going to get used up real quick most times.
Years ago, teams reacted to all this Bristol banging in one of two ways. They brought a car that was already beat up, or they built a tank.
I think 15 years ago, you brought something you weren't afraid to give up, and some guys brought real tough race cars. But I think right now, a win is a win, and Bristol is important as Daytona when you're talking about Winston Cup points and winner's circle program and things of that nature.
As far as beefing them up just to beat on each other, you just try to look through the shop and pick the oldest car that's already beat up the most and bring it here. The only thing we have to do to come up here and race is we have to raise the cars up a little bit, a quarter to a half an inch, because we run so hard into these corners, it tends to bottom the car out. So we do raise them up. Other than that, they're just like we race every other week.
Now that's one point on which all the crew chiefs agreed. Get the ride height up to avoid bottoming out. And the bottom line on Bristol Car Prep, it's not so much what you bring here, it's what you do with it after you get here.
We don't really bring them old tanks like we used to. You know, now you just bring a real good race car and do the best you can and try to stay smart, stay safe, qualify up front, get a good pit spot, have good pit stops so you can maintain track position. I think you'll see a lot of people making decisions based on fuel rather than tires because track position is of just paramount importance here.
All right, look for that tonight, 7:30 on ESPN. They're working on Dale Jarrett's machine. Practice is underway. We're live. I love this stuff. It's Bristol International Raceway, NASCAR Today, and we'll be right back. Live at Bristol. We've talked about the intensity of competition here, how close the field are bracketed. If you want an example of what racing in Bristol is like, well, I hope you were tuned in last night live on ESPN. The Busch Grand National Race was a perfect example. Let's start with a big wreck. It was that kind of night. Tapped by Jimmy Spencer. Randy LaJoie goes around. Ed Barrier, Curtis Markham, Rodney Combs, and Jim Bound all in it. And 5 more guys who should have crashed didn't. Welcome to Bristol. The series leader, Johnny Benson, bulls past pole sitter Stevie Reeves and grabs a lead he'll hold for most laps. Meanwhile, just behind him, Kenny Wallace nudges Jeff Green, who almost saves it right here. And he goes around, almost gets Larry Pearson. Then we're going to ride on the replay with Green while I tell you that a lap after the restart, Wallace and Pearson crashed. Like we said, welcome to Bristol. Now, the leaders were just about ready to pit when the next big incident happens. That's Buckshot Jones into the back of Mike McLaughlin. Now, this is the slow-mo, so it'll take a minute before Elton Sawyer comes along and broadsides McLaughlin. And the pits. Did Benson get enough fuel? And over on the back pit, Steve Grissom, winner of the spring race, but starting this one way in the back, took only 2 tires, gained a ton of track position. New leaders didn't pit. Chad Little spun by Jeff Green. Green gets a little of Little, and Green's big brother, David, also got involved in that one. At the end, it comes down to these two. Benson blown off by Grissom. Johnny's right front tire went flat. Grissom blew by, didn't look back. He's the first Grand National guy to win both Bristols in the same year, but from 28 starting spot, that's impressive. Behind Grissom, Green scored a career best second. Tim Fedewa edged Little for third, but Chad took a bite out of Benson's point lead. Johnny wound up 12th after the tire change and saw his lead narrowed to 29 points over Little. All right, the winner of that race last night's doing double duty because Steve Grissom's jumping right into the Winston Cup deal. I have no idea. Is he on the racetrack? Let me find out in Bestwick and see if we can do the winner interview.
Oh, he kind of settled in here behind under the tarp here next in front of his pit stall. They're way in his car before he goes back out. Steve, 28th to first last night. How'd you pass all those race cars here?
I'll tell you, the car worked awful good. It was kind of amazing. Yesterday after our last practice, we changed 4 shocks, couple springs, a sway bar, and moved some lead around on the car. And we didn't qualify exactly where we'd hoped, but you know, the car was awful good in the race. And we kind of talked there about 70 laps. I think there was a caution right around in there. But we just be smart. The car was capable of winning the race. And, you know, the guys made a good pit stop, made a good call, win the pit. And from that, it was just kind of our night. We had a couple close calls as far as some other wrecks and stuff. But, you know, we were able to keep our nose clean and had something left there at the end to run with.
You haven't had a top 10 finish since North Wilkesboro in April. What are you working on to try and turn that around?
Well, hopefully last night's a new beginning. I tell you, it's kind of been here, especially through the summer months. Anything we get kind of goes against us. Last week in Michigan, we had a flat tire under green, and then the steering box went out. And it's just been kind of little things like that that's been getting us. And it kind of looked like last last night, maybe the worm turned for us, and we're going to jump in here tonight, try to build on what we done last night and continue on.
All right, that's Steve Grissom, the Meineke Chevy driver. I think this is the same pit stall he had last night. That might be a good luck sign, Dave.
All right, thanks, Bestwick. Alan wants me to pick a winner. I'm not going out on that limb at Bristol. I'll pick a color. I'll take black. That'd give me Earnhardt over there. That'd give me Wallace, the defending race champion. That'd give me Dale Jarrett for a dark horse. And that'd give me a piece of Darrell Waltrip's paint job, wouldn't it? He's a 12-time winner here at Bristol. We'll be back to wrap it up right after this timeout. We're back at Bristol, where there's no new word this week on the date or place of Ernie Irvin's return to racing. But Winston Cup Scene did a piece this week that talked about Ernie's discussions with racetracks about getting paid to make his comeback there. And Steve Wade, the editor, offered some very good opinions about his concern that Ernie might be, quote, tainted by crass commercialism, unquote, regarding his comeback. And I agree with that. I think Ernie's primary concern should be earning back the confidence of his fellow drivers and of his team when he does make his return. But having said that, I think anybody who is concerned about crass commercialism is in the wrong business, because Winston Cup Racing is just that. The point is, these guys are professionals, and by definition that means they do it for money. And Ernie Irvin's comeback is going to generate a lot of money in ticket sales and in t-shirt sales. He's the guy who suffered through the injury. He's the guy who worked his way to the comeback. When that payback comes, I think he ought to be the first guy in line at the payback window. As far as crass commercialism, I think these guys deserve every nickel that they get. I'll start worrying about them being tainted by crass commercialism when they sign $14 million contracts and then immediately go on strike. Right now, I'm not worried about it. Let's go to Alan Bestwick.
All right, we're standing by with Jeff Gordon, the fourth fastest qualifier for the race. He's standing up on the wall time in cars. Jeff, can you make it a Bristol sweep tonight?
I don't know. You know, this place changes at night, but, you know, we stayed out of trouble last time we were there at the end. We didn't have the fastest car all day long, but we were there at the end. If we can do that again, I think we can be in contention. But, you know, right now we're just looking for consistency. That's the biggest key to us right now, and we've got that so far. We qualified fourth. Car feels pretty good, but it's going to be a long night.
How much of what you're practicing now changes when we go to the darkness tonight?
Yeah, and all of our notes tell us that. You know, we've got to go by what we know in the past. We can't go by exactly what's going on right now. There's going to be guys that are fast now that might not be fast later. Guys that aren't fast now that will be fast later. So we got to hope that we're somewhere in that category.
Concerned about losing points at Bristol. Is that in your mind as you race tonight?
Well, you know, if the car's right, you don't have to use too many brakes. And as far as staying out of trouble, that's the biggest thing. Making sure the brakes go your way. You know, but you can't control what happens out there. You just got to kind of pray to God and hope for the best and hope for a clean race. I've only had one good clean race here, and that was the time we won last time.
And he's going to try and make it a Bristol sweep tonight. Jeff Gordon. Dave?
All right, thank you, Alan Bestwick. Mark Martin starts from the pole 7:30 tonight. We'll be here at 7 o'clock on the Deuce, ESPN2, with our live pre-race show, and that will be followed immediately by the race live on ESPN Classic at 7:30. Next week, we're off to Darlington Saturday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll preview the action from the track Too Tough to Tame. Sports Center is next. My thanks to Alan Bestwick. That's going to wrap up the story here at Bristol. Watch the race tonight on this network, and we'll see you then. I'm Dave Despain. So long, everybody.